Welcome, everybody. I'm Michael Shuey here with SkinScript, and thank you for joining us for Shift Your Perspective, Don't Run from Retailing. I wanted to create a class to help students specifically figure out why sometimes retailing can be very difficult for them in the beginning. And so this class today is hopefully going to help you start to see how you can figure out maybe why you're having a difficulty retailing and be able to move forward through that. So I am the Director of Education for SkinScript Skincare. I have been a licensed esthetician and massage therapist for about 20 years now. And I also was a former Director of Education. I worked for a school for many years. So what I found was when students would get into the clinic, they would sometimes freeze up or have a lot of fear when it came to having to retail. I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist, and so I work with a lot of people with overcoming fears and phobias. So I thought this would be a great way to kind of integrate how we can look at some fears and phobias and how we can create shifts in our brains, so that way you can look at retailing from a very different perspective. So the word fear. When we look at fear, it can mean a couple things. It could mean forget everything and run. And fear is a physiological reaction. We have the fight, flight, or freeze. And this is an autonomic nervous system. It just naturally happens. It's very ingrained into our DNA. And when we have this fear, the fight or flight, we get a surge of adrenaline, our heart rate gets up, and we're ready to go. And it is how our body protects us. We also have the freeze. The freeze is a protective mechanism where we're basically freezing to kind of hide from prey, basically. And the thing is our brains don't know really the difference between being chased by a tiger, which is fear, or maybe the fear that you have of retailing. We go either into this fight, flight, or freeze. But we have the ability where we can start to shift things, and maybe instead of fear, we can shift it to face everything and rise. So your brain has this really cool ability to repattern, and our brains typically like to do the same thing over and over again. But when we start to give it a shift, it can start to change very easily. So first of all, we have to understand why we have to retail to clients. And it's very important to understand why we're doing this. Clients are going to come in and they want your help. They want to make change to their skin. And it's really our job to help them choose the right products, to help guide them, to educate them. And even if you have a client come into your clinic and say, I just want to relax, I'm not here to buy any products, great. Let them relax, but at the same time, you're going to continue to educate them and you're going to talk about their skin. And even if they say they don't want to purchase any products, you're still going to give them information. And at the end of the treatment, they might actually want to purchase something at that point. We also know that home care is key to change. We really need to make sure that we teach our clients this concept. If they're just coming in and expecting you to do everything for them, we know they're not going to get the results they need. It typically takes about 30 days for our cellular turnover to happen. And as clients age, that number is going to increase. So at a minimum, it's going to take 30 days plus to make change. And that's being consistent with home care. So we want to teach our clients that information so that way they understand why we're trying to get them to use home care on a regular basis. This is also part of our job expectation. We are going to be expected to retail no matter where you work. And so you're probably going to have sales goals, and that can be a lot of fearful for some people, but hopefully you'll figure out how to shift this so that you can reach those goals. And finally, really, this is a big part of our income in the industry. You're going to make commission, average maybe anywhere from 10 to 20% commission on your retailing. And the more that you retail, usually the more commission, higher rates you're going to have. So it is a part of our industry, and we really have to figure out how are we going to be able to accomplish this. So what is blocking you from retailing? The first thing that you can do is you can figure out what it is, why you're having a hard time possibly retailing. So we're going to do an activity here, and I'm going to ask you to use your imagination for a little bit. And if you're in a place where you can safely close your eyes for a moment, please do that. If you're driving, if you're listening to this while operating heavy machinery, please do not do this activity right now. But if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to use your imagination and just take in a deep breath and let it out. And now I want you to imagine you are finishing up your treatment with your client in your clinic. And the client's getting off the table, and you're meeting them at the door, and you're going to walk them out to the retail space. And as you walk out to the retail space and you're getting ready to retail to this client, I want you to feel in your body, what are you starting to feel? Do you have any areas of tension? Maybe your hands are starting to sweat a little bit. Maybe your heart's starting to race. Maybe you feel a little tension in your throat. Maybe your body feels super relaxed. And as you go to begin to talk to your client about the products, what are the thoughts going through your head? Do you feel confident? Or do you feel like maybe you don't have all the answers? And as you imagine yourself beginning this retailing process, what are the emotions that are coming up? Do you feel confident? Do you feel fear? Do you feel anxiety? And so take in another deep breath, and then go ahead and open your eyes, shake that off a little bit. Go ahead and put in the chat if you want to share what you felt. If you're feeling some anxiety, if you felt literally like your hands starting to sweat and you're just visualizing it at that point, then that probably tells you that you have some fear or anxiety to actually doing that in real life. And the interesting thing about our brains really don't know the difference between imagination and reality. So if you actually imagine something, this is one way to make a shift. Athletes do this all the time. They will actually imagine and visualize themselves making shots over and over and over again. And that will start to actually train their brain to have more success with their shots. So simple thing you can do is go through and imagine your retailing. Make it as real as possible. Get as confident as you can. Feel that confidence, because if you can imagine it in a positive aspect, you'll start to shift your brain to actually do it in real life. But there's some common things that we do see, and these happen to be usually the common things with when you start to retail that kind of block you. And this could be lack of confidence. You say to yourself, I've never done this before. I'm not sure how to do this. Fear of being wrong. This is that where you maybe freeze up or you forget what you're going to say. Or it could be a fear of failure also. Rejection. We're going to talk about rejection today, and uncomfortable word, no. Not wanting to be a salesperson. This is a very kind of typical feeling a lot of students get. They don't want to be salesy. And then personal bias and past experience, how basically what's happened to you in the past can affect how you want to retail to clients. So to make any change, we really need to start to train our brains to see things from a different perspective and create a shift. So let's look about how we shift things. So here, when you look at the screen, do you see 3 or 4 bars? It really depends on your perspective and how you're looking at it. And when you first look at this, I know when I looked at it, it gave me a little anxiety because my brain was really trying to figure it out. But if you're looking from the left side, you may see 4 bars. If you're looking from the right side, you may see 3 bars. And so this is really basically depending on how you're looking at things. And this is how we need to see where are we at right now with our perspective, and then how can we shift it so we can see things from a different way. Our brain creates neural pathways and loves to do the same thing over and over again. So when it's challenged, sometimes we have a hard time seeing a different perspective. If you think of it this way, maybe you drive the same way to school every day, but now there's an accident on the road and you maybe have to take some side streets on an alternative to get there. At first, that might be a little stressful for you because you don't know where you're going and how to get there. But maybe when you get to your destination, you realize, wait, that was actually an easier route for me to get to school every day. So instead of going the way you normally go, now you've kind of shifted and you're creating this new pathway. Well, that's what happens to our brain actually when we create a shift. So let's look at some of these common blocks and how we can actually begin to create shifts within them. So This is where we can also see we can create a shift from fear to courage and I can't to I can. So one of the common things I will see a lot of times, especially with new students, are the lack of confidence and the fear of being wrong. Think about in class, how many times has your instructor asked a question, you really think you know the answer, but maybe you were a little nervous to raise your hand, because what if you raise your hand and you have the wrong answer? There's sometimes that fear of being wrong, or is everybody going to laugh at me? And so we want to shift this. And so if you find yourself saying, well, I just don't know enough about the products. I don't know how to retail, how to do this. The first shift you can make is to begin to study and practice. You really can empower yourself with knowledge. And this could be, number one, looking at ingredients in general. You really want to start to get to know ingredients, because if you know general ingredients, you're going to be able to pick up any bottle in our industry, look at it, see who it's good for, and feel confident to talk about it. And so doing a weekly ingredient spotlight is a great way. You could do this with some of your fellow students and just practice. The only way to really get good at ingredient knowledge is to practice it on a regular basis. Use your training manuals. Study those training manuals from your skincare lines. We have a great training manual online. When you have an account with us, you get a free PDF training manual. And it is great because it really breaks down not only the products, what's in it, but it also gives you some information on the talking points for specific ingredients, for trademark ingredients. And so this is a great place to really study once you know general ingredients. Take some extra classes. Once you're out of school, you're going to need to continue your education. This is a great way to feel comfortable, to get more information, to empower yourself. And then finally, shelf talkers. Shelf talkers are little cards that go on your retail shelf that give you some little bullet points about each product. So if you're somebody who freezes up when you get to that retail wall, the shelf talkers are great because you can look at the shelf talker. It will tell you exactly what to say, those little key points. That'll start to help you train you with those key points. And after a while, you won't even need the shelf talkers anymore. And here at SkinScript, we have some great shelf talkers too to help you retail. Another fear is, what if I make a mistake? And the fact of life is we all make mistakes. So we really need to start to learn from these mistakes and be able to move forward. And so most clients aren't going to know you make a mistake unless you tell them. I would see a lot of times in the clinic when students were doing treatments on their clients, they might forget a step and the client would never know. But all of a sudden the student says, oh my gosh, I completely forgot this. I'm so sorry. And now the client's aware of the mistake. So try not to call out your mistakes unless it's something you really need to tell the client. But we all are expected to know everything, and we can't know everything. I've been doing this for many, many years, and I still have to research and look up different topics. So give yourself a little patience and grace with this. If you don't have the answer, just say, let me find out and get back to you. And with patience and grace for yourself, I would always teach my students, after you have an interaction, after you do your facial or after you're retailing, instead of going back and replaying everything you did wrong, which we tend to do, because when we focus on the negative, we start to ingrain that into our brain. So ask yourself 2 questions after you're done with your session with your client. Number 1, what would I change? What's the one thing I would change? Only focus on what was the most important thing that you would do differently. And then the second question is what did I do best? You want to look at, okay, what's the one thing I can change? And then what did I really knock out of the park here? And end in that positive, because that's going to create a positive memory of that experience. And if you continue to ask yourself those 2 questions each time, you'll start to shift what you can do better, and you'll really start to focus on the things that you are doing positively. Okay, so we're going to do another visualization activity really quick. So if you're in a space where you can close your eyes, again, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, take a deep breath. And in a moment, I'm going to begin to say a few things, and I want you to just see what you experience as these things are said. So take in another deep breath. Let it out. No, absolutely not. No, never. No. This is the power of no. You can open your eyes now. How many of you, when I said no, never, 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 no, all of a sudden felt that? No is a very powerful word, and the reason it's so powerful is it's one of the first words we learn as children, and we hear it over and over again. If you're a parent, you've probably said this many, many times to your children. And the more we're exposed to a word, specifically no in this way, it starts to shape our behaviors. And when you hear the word no, it actually will start to trigger memories. It'll trigger an emotional response. And so when you hear the word no, and you're having a reaction to it, it's actually usually you're reacting to the memory of hearing it as a childhood or through other ways. So it's really important to understand that the word no can trigger physical reactions, memories, and negative thoughts. But when we look at no and how to shift this, we can see that saying no is an important aspect of setting boundaries, asserting yourself. It can be very empowering. If you're in the treatment room and your client is asking you to do something out of your scope of practice, you may have to say no and set that boundary. But the biggest shift that you can think about with no is if a client says no when you ask them if they want to purchase something, it's not about you. When we hear the word no, our brain wants to trigger it back to us. But them saying no actually could just mean, not right now. I don't have it in my budget. I have to wait till payday. Let me think about it. So them saying no actually has nothing to do with you. And when you can shift it that way, it starts to take that power of that word no and starts to make it so it doesn't have as much power over you. The fear of rejection, this is also ingrained in our DNA. This really comes back from our ancestors. Being accepted in society was essential for survival. If you were shunned from society, your chances of survival back then were not very good. And so this is something that, throughout our ancestry has kind of been ingrained in us. And there is a very psychological impact of this. I always think of high school. Were you part of the cool group or were you an outcast? Did you ever ask somebody out and they rejected you in front of everybody? That certainly probably caused a lot of anxiety and stress, and that can lead to avoidance behavior. If you've tried something over and over again and failed, a lot of times your brain might say, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. I think I know what the outcome's going to be negative, so I'm just not going to try. And this is where I would see a lot of times in the clinic, students just would not retail. They would just not ask, they wouldn't do it because they were avoiding it because they didn't want to have that stress and anxiety. So instead of avoiding it, let's start to shift and look at these as learning opportunities. Instead of a personal failure, I'm going to at least try. And each time, maybe a no, that helps you kind of succeed to a yes. And this is where you can practice. One tip I used to always tell my students at school was when you're getting ready to take your client out to the retail area, tell your client, say, part of my job is to retail. Would you mind if I practice retailing with you and just role play? And absolutely no pressure to purchase anything today, but this will give me time to practice what I would say to my clients. Would you be willing to role play with me today? The client is usually almost always going to say yes. And then that takes the pressure off of you feeling like you actually have to do it. And it gives the pressure off the client for having to purchase something. So you role play with them, you actually get to practice, and then usually what happens is the client will love what you said and they'll end up purchasing something. And this is a great way then to kind of repattern and take the negative thoughts to positive thoughts. And each time you get one of those wins, just congratulate yourself with that information so that you feel more empowered. Not wanting to be a salesperson. We don't want to be this guy, usually the car salesman, right? Sleazy cars salesman. And a lot of us feel like we're in an industry where we don't want to be salesy, and you definitely don't need to be salesy. So one way to shift this is to think about educating. Don't sell, educate. And education comes from the moment that that client walks in the door. You are going to focus on that client and you're going to educate them through consultation, through skin analysis, all the way up through the treatment and when you're doing your retailing at the end. A couple things, though, sales tips that will help you are when you listen to how your client asks questions, they will tell you exactly how they want information. There are some communication styles. There's a director, thinker, relator, and socializer. And the directors are going to be very direct. They're going to ask things like, what are the results? They want to know what the end outcome's going to be. A thinker is going to ask you what's in this. They're going to be very specific about the ingredients. Someone who's a relator might ask things about smell or feel, or you put a product on them and like, oh, I love the way this smells. This reminds me of whatever. And then the socializer might say things like, well, how's this going to make me look? So when you listen to the words that they're telling you, they're actually going to tell you how they want you to give information. So when you are retailing, there are 3 things you can do to retail any product. And number 1 is, why do they need it? They've hopefully already told you this in their consultation. Maybe they're working on hyperpigmentation. What are the benefits? So you know your products at this point, you know your ingredients. So you can then deliver those benefits in the way that that client has told you they want information. If you have somebody who says, well, what are my results going to be for hyperpigmentation? You can say, well, our glycolic retinol pads are going to give you the results you need because they have arbutin and kojic in them. These are going to give you those results and help brighten your skin. Is this something that you think that you would like? Or even with the director, you would say, this is what you're going to use to get those results. You're going to be very direct with them. And another trick is always give the product to the client. Put it in their hands. So if you have the retail shelf, pick up the bottle, give it to them while you're talking about it. They're going to look at that. There is a psychological effect. Once a client has something in their hand, they actually don't want to let it go. So putting it in their hand and then actually asking them, is this something that you think you would like to try? Or, I know you loved the smell of our hydrating moisturizer. This has that almond smell in it, and even pump some on their hands so that they can smell it again. Or with your socializers, this hydrating moisturizer is going to make your skin glow. Your friends and family are going to absolutely want to know what you're doing. So listen to the client. They're going to tell you exactly how they want to be retailed to. If you've ever seen the movie Pretty Woman, you've probably seen this clip before or you're familiar with it. And this relates back to personal biases and past experiences. In the movie, Julia Roberts goes into a high-end store on Rodeo Drive. She's not dressed well, and the saleswoman will not help her and actually asks her to leave. And Julia Roberts actually gets cleaned up. She goes shopping and she gets some great clothes, and she comes back in, and now the salesperson really wants to help her. And she says, hey, do you remember me? Salesperson says, no, I'm sorry. And she says, well, I was here yesterday and you wouldn't wait on me. You work on commission, right? And the salesperson says, yes. And she says, shows her all of her packages and says, big mistake, huge mistake. And personal biases and past experience are basically our own beliefs, perspectives, and experiences, and how we make decisions. And what this does is we create judgment on somebody else. We start to actually project our own thoughts and feelings on somebody else instead of letting them make the decisions that they need to. So if you find yourself while you're retailing saying to yourself, they won't like this. What you're really saying is I don't like this. And if you don't like your product line, you're not going to be successful in retailing it. If you're thinking they can't afford this, what you're really saying is I would not pay for that. Who would buy this? You're saying, I wouldn't buy this. They'll just say no. You're kind of saying, I'm not confident. So instead of projecting your own past experiences and biases on somebody, you really need to be as neutral as possible. Don't judge. Let them make those decisions for themselves. A great example is a lot of times with price. If a client asks you how much a serum is, and you say, well, this serum is $85. What did I just do? I just put my own personal belief that the serum is expensive and it's not worth $85. But if the client asks me about the serum and they say, how much is a serum? And I say, you know what? This serum is $85. It's amazing value. It is going to give you the results you need. I've just talked in a very specific way, and you can hear the tone in my voice that I actually believe that it's worth that. So really pay attention to what you're saying and how you're saying it. And if you find yourself putting some judgment in there, you've got to shift that out and be as neutral as possible. So here at SkinScript, we have a lot of different ways to help you with your retailing, and we do that through our 3 pillars. With our products, some things about that is we are safe for all Fitzpatricks, which is amazing. We have over 40 trademark and registered trademark ingredients. And the great thing about that is you'll find all that information in our training manual, but you can also find research based on that. And that's a great way to help empower yourself when you're retailing. We have no minimums in our line, which is really nice. And we have a sample program. When you purchase a retail product from us, you'll get a matching sample. That is a great way to help build your confidence with retailing, because you can recommend products to your client. You can give them samples to go home and try. They'll fall in love with the product, they come back, and then they're ready to purchase from you. We have award-winning customer service, and all of our customer service reps are estheticians. So when you call us, and we do answer the phone Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., you can actually talk to a live person, and they're going to be there to help support you. And finally, with all of our educational resources, we have so many classes. We have a lot of free education. As a student, you can create an account for free. If you go onto our website, just click Become a Pro. And once you have an account, you'll have all these resources available. Our Learning Center has product knowledge classes that are free. As I said earlier, there is a whole training manual on there. And we also offer free online classes, workshops. So we have a lot of things that can help support you and make you confident with your retailing. So to recap everything, to make a successful shift, it does take a little bit of time, but the first thing you have to do is you have to define the change that you want to make. You need to tell your brain and decide. And that's the hardest step. Once you decide to make a change, your brain will start to shift. And that, number 2, is creating a plan and a strategy. A lot of the things that we talked about today are just simple, easy ways that you can start to shift. Maybe thinking about the visualization and really seeing yourself accomplishing your goals. Number 3, empower yourself with education. Develop those skills. Study your ingredients. This is going to help you with that lack of confidence or the fear of being wrong. Setting your mindset and attitude. This is going to be helping to think on more of a positive note to retrain your brain. Support systems are really important, and this can be your instructors at school, your fellow students, or us here at SkinScript. We are always here to help you out. Commitment and consistency. Commit to asking every time, to retailing each time. And in the beginning, even though it may feel scary, you're going to start to feel more confident, and you're going to start to get those yeses and build your confidence. Accountability and assessment. Go back to those 2 questions that we talked about earlier today. Number 1, what was the one thing that I would change next time? And number 2, what did I do really amazing? End with that positive. And that's going to help you kind of focus on the positive and not really focus on the negative. And then finally, just really be patient with yourself. Give yourself practice. Practice and visualize yourself being successful. This is going to really help to start some of these shifts, and you're going to start to see that retail doesn't have to be as scary. You might actually start to really enjoy it. So I hope that you all enjoyed this today, and you can check us out at skinscriptrx.com. And like I said, you as a student, you can have a free account. We have no minimums, and click Become a Pro, get your account set up, and start taking advantage of all that education. You can also follow us on social media at SkinScriptRx, and please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you guys, everybody. Have a wonderful day.